When most folks hear the word statistics, they picture numbers on a page, maybe a graph or two on the chalkboard, but the very first lesson in stats class. Simple things like dot plots, histograms, averages, and spotting oddball numbers, they're all part of a much bigger story. They're the same tools that people have been using for hundreds of years to make decisions that ultimately shaped history. Even the name statistics, it goes way back. It comes from the Latin word status, meaning state. Back in the 1700s, governments were adding up crops, armies, and populations so leaders knew how strong their country was. Over time, those records turned into science, and that science is what we study today. So when you're working a homework set, you're really using ideas that once guided kings, generals, and doctors. Take graphs. In the late 1700s, a Scotsman named William Playfair, he started drawing bar charts and line graphs. By 1801, he'd come up with a pie chart. He wanted people to see numbers instead of just reading them. A few decades later, Florence Nightingale, the famous nurse, she used a circular chart during the Crimean War in the 1850s to prove more British soldiers were dying from disease than from fighting. That chart, which looked a lot like a modern-day pie chart, convinced the government to clean up hospitals. Something you practice on notebook paper once changed how wars were fought. Now think about outliers, the numbers that don't fit. Back in the early 1800s, astronomers noticed Uranus wasn't orbiting quite right. It looked like bad data, but two mathematicians, Urbain Le Verrier in France and John Couch Adams in England, they figured another planet must be tugging on it. And sure enough, in 1846, telescopes found Neptune almost exactly where their math said it would be. One oddball point in the data revealed a brand new planet tugging on Uranus. In medicine, outliers matter too. During the 1954 polio vaccine trials in the United States, a handful of unusual cases, paralysis after vaccination, turned out to be traced to a bad batch. Catching those outliers led to tighter safety rules, and that wound up protecting millions of children. The same goes for averages. We've got the mean, the median, and the mode. The mean, or plain average, it can be thrown off by extremes. That's why the median, the middle value, often tells the real story. In 2022, the median household income in the United States, it was about $74,580. But the mean was way higher, over $102,000. A few very high earners pulled the mean upward. And if you want to know what's typical, the median is the number to look at. It's the same lesson you learn when one really high test score throws off the class average. Spread, it matters too. Back in the 1890s, a man named Carl Pearson, he came up with a formula for standard deviation. And that shows how tightly numbers sit around the average. A low standard deviation means results are consistent. That's how factories know if their ball bearings are going to roll smoothly, and how doctors know if a new medicine works the same for most patients. If the spread is wide, you can't trust the results. And if it's narrow, you know that you've definitely got something reliable. And then there's shape, how the data looks, how it looks when you plot it out. The bell curve, or normal distribution, it shows up all over the place. Heights, test scores, even small errors in manufacturing. Most things land near the middle. Few out at the edges, though. And when the data doesn't follow that shape, something unusual is typically going on. And that's how scientists spot problems. So, here's my point. The first unit of statistics, it seems real basic, but it's not. Those same simple graphs and those averages once helped reform hospitals, discover planets, and keep vaccines safe. And when you, sitting in a classroom, anywhere in the world today, when you draw a bar chart or calculate a median, you're taking part in that same tradition. What looks like homework is really training in how to find truth in a sea of numbers. These are Interesting Things with JC.